Hey Motley crew, welcome to Musings with Them. I'm going to be doing a Tales by Moonlight. My name is Dibia and nchedochukwu. Hey, so as always, opening up this sacred space, setting the intention that I'm a clear channel of the highest truth rooted in love with clarity for y'all today as I share my perspective, my experiences, the wisdom and learnings that I received along my healing and spiritual journey. That as you exist in energetic space with me, as you hear me, see me, that you may receive healing energy to help awaken your soul into the truth of who you are within. Isa. All right, Chim, high stuff, let's do this. So I'm going to talk about my intense spiritual awakening, y'all, because it was rough. It was an awakening process I did not expect, and yet it was exactly what my soul at that moment in time had called to do so that I can awaken. Now some of you may be asking, like, how do you know if you're on that process or if you're on that time frame or in that road? Well, if you question, you are. If you are listening, you are. It's not something that I chose, but it chose me because that's what my soul agreed to do in that specific period of time. And so after the end of my engagement, that relationship like catapulted me open. It was as if my heart broke open so the light of the divine could flow into me, and I began to feel this unease about where I was and what I was doing. I was trying to push forward in my career, at my job as a healthcare consultant at this time, and I just wasn't making any traction. It's just like every single place I tried to like put in effort or put in roots in terms of like career, it just wasn't working out. It wasn't working out. I was facing a roadblock, and it just seemed that I was not being allowed to move forward, and that's because the place where I wasn't where I was meant to be. I was trying to sow roots in a place that wasn't fertile for me. And so at the start of like 2020, which is actually a time where a lot of people started to awaken, and a lot of people started to question their life and how things were and the way they were living life, I found myself doing the same. And we are right now actually in a process in which another mass group of souls are starting to undergo their own awakening process, especially with this Saturn in Pisces. So I'm going back to the story though. I was trying to push forward, and I kept getting blocked at every single juncture. I felt like my relationships were falling apart. I felt like I just wasn't being appreciated or seen or acknowledged in the work I was doing. My health was starting to also fall apart too. And that was like my way of my body saying like, this isn't what we're meant to do. This isn't the life we're meant to live. I was working a 9-to-5 life on my computer all the time, expected to work like more than 40 hours a week because that was the norm of what people did. And on top of that, being involved in like company activities and all of these things, was like involved in like social justice initiatives and programming. I had my hands in so many pots, and I was overstretched, overworked, and also depressed and anxious and sick. Like at this point in time, my mental health got really bad, and I ended up having to see a psychiatrist. And in the process of seeing a psychiatrist, realized like, yeah, this helped in the short term in terms of I was able to get short-term disability leave because I was seeing a psychiatrist, but it wasn't what I needed for myself. So after that, I realized like, yeah, this job isn't necessarily for me. However, it did allow me to see an inside view of the healthcare industry, of how these health systems actually work, y'all. And let me tell you, they don't talk about consultants when it comes to healthcare and how healthcare is structured, but consultants are one of the main factors in how these CEOs and C-suite executives are making decisions about people's health. And it's not always about what's going to help the patient the most. Sometimes it's just about the money. And so I got very disillusioned because I came in like healthcare, health equity was really important to me. Healing justice was really important to me. And I just wasn't getting and being able to do the work I really wanted to do, even though some of my work was public health related and government related, it still wasn't feeling aligned. And so in this process of spiritually awakening, I was also seeing an energy healer and also learning how to do energy healing as a Reiki practitioner. And in the process of energy healing, I was experiencing so many things I had no one to talk to about. Like I was having like heat in my head, prickles on my scalp, throbbing in my third eye. I would be feeling sick and tired all the time. I started to experience this weird movement of energy within my body that I didn't know what it was called. Now I know now that was the process of my kundalini awakening, and that like all of this pressure and stuff in my head and my third eye was a process of those parts of my body, in my crown chakra and my third eye opening. But I didn't know that at the time because I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And I was also feeling this huge immense of like darkness and void. And so I was going through this dark night of the soul, or as a part of the spiritual process, awakening process, where you enter the void. And the void is this feeling of emptiness, aloneness, of nothing, none of this matters, of not being drawn to anyone or anything, of feeling this utter sense of desolation. And also, it felt like I was on an island on my own. And that island was bare. And I had no way out. And I was in the dark. That's how it felt. I didn't know where to go or who to turn to. I felt so lost during my dark night of the soul. And it was very, very intense, because it was in that dark night of the soul I had to really face myself. I had to actually see myself. And that's what I was being called to do. In the process of my spiritual awakening process, I had to see my shadow. I had to learn that I was actually living in my shadow. The parts of myself that was unhealed, how I was behaving in relationships, how I was behaving towards myself, the pain and hurt from the past, not only just like the end of my engagement, but the situations, but the childhood raising, but the abuse that helped bring me to a place of experiencing that kind of relationship to begin with, that laid that foundation. And it was in that process that I learned that I was an addict, y'all. Like, I have an addictive personality, that I was someone who escaped from reality, because that's what I learned to do as a child in a different way. It was during the dark night of my soul that I realized, oh yeah, I'm definitely codependent. And this was a codependent relationship I was on because I didn't see my self-worth. But that I took a step towards it. I took a step towards seeing that for myself and respecting myself and seeing my self-worth by leaving that relationship. But it was in this process that all of the parts of myself that I had repressed, that I wasn't really ready to look at, that I was running away from by being so busy in my life. I was so busy, y'all. I was always busy. It all came up because I have nothing to do. When I had work, but outside of work, we were in the pandemic, so there really wasn't nothing to do. And I saw myself sitting there, laying there. Y'all, I was in bed for a couple of years, scrolling, using YouTube, scrolling through all of these things, trying to understand, trying to figure out what was happening with me. And it was in that process I learned and discovered tarot, which brought me closer to my own spirituality. Because again, I was like, wow, people are telling me about myself. They don't even know me. What is this? And so it made me question. I became curious and I began to explore. And so my dark night of the soul was really me coming into a deep knowing of what it was I needed to heal within myself, how to do that inner healing, and then awakening my own spiritual abilities on this process. It was one where I learned how to connect to my higher self and the way that we communicate, as well as my ancestors. I felt for the first time this deep knowing that I wasn't alone, even though I was alone, but I still felt so much, very much so alone. And during my dark night, I was trying so hard, y'all, to move forward. I was like trying so hard to move forward, but I was literally told to sit down. They told me to sit down. Spirit's like, you need to sit. your whole life you've been running. It's time to live life differently. And I didn't know what that meant for me, y'all. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how I could, because my nervous system at that point was wired to go. It was on the go, 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 go. And I realized I had this sense of anxiety within me. I didn't know how to relax. I didn't know how to relax. I wasn't in a state of peace. I was always worried about something falling apart, or this fear of not doing enough, or this fear of, oh, if I don't do this, I'm going to be punished, which came from my childhood of like facing retribution because of like the things that I would do. And so I had to learn how to really take care of myself in that process, to learn how to forgive. I keep saying forgive, but it really was forgiving, like really going back to each and every situation and like meditating and experiencing it and retrieving the parts of my energy and soul that have stayed in those situations. And as each time I did that, each time I experienced that level of healing and that coming back to self, I experienced more wholeness and harmony within. But like, let me tell you, I was so frustrated that I couldn't move. It felt like I was really being put on timeout by spirit. And I'm so glad that I had that time. And even though like I didn't use the time, there is no point in hindsight, right? But looking back, I was so frustrated about not moving forward that I didn't even enjoy all the time I had because I was so frustrated about not moving forward. And so during my dark night of the soul, it was like I was so plunged into darkness, y'all. I was really going through all of my trauma, going over it for myself. And I felt like the people around me didn't understand. I felt like the friends that I did have didn't understand and weren't willing to actually do the work to like understand, which is a simple Google at this point. And that I realized that there were people around me who just wanted to be around me because I made them feel good, that they couldn't give me what I was giving them, that they didn't honor and cherish emotional labor. Like to be there for someone emotionally is a hard thing to do. Let me not say that. To be there for someone emotionally when they're going through a tough time takes a lot of skill and really requires that you're able to hold space. And I realized there were a lot of people around me who couldn't hold space for me the same way that I was being able to hold space for them, and that they didn't see the value in being able to do that for someone, to be able to have someone feel emotionally safe with you, to feel vulnerable with you, is a skill. It is labor. It is something that should be cherished and honored, and it is something that people should pay for. You should pay for it. If you do it, you need to pay for it. You need, yes. And so I realized like I was in relationships, not even in romantic relationships, otherwise, where I was being used in this way, and I wasn't receiving back that same level of ability, because someone can only be there for you as deeply as they've been there for themselves, as deeply as they've been able to hold themselves in their own trauma and pain. And I realized I had a deep capacity to sit with suffering, a deep capacity to sit with pain and loss and grief because of my life. And I was in this process where I was excavating all of the muck. I was releasing and seeing all of the layers that I had put on myself of what it meant to be me, that I had put on myself of what it meant to live in this world. And it's not just like the trauma or the pain. It was just like, how do I move in the world? I was very much at this point logic and rationality and what made sense, moving in the world around how does this make sense. And I realized that there was something more within me, my intuition, my higher self, the guidance of my spiritual team and family were coming forward during this dark night of the soul to be like, hey, we are here. It's time to connect to this part of you that is always and has always been very intuitive, has always been very psychic, has always been very prophetic. And I didn't realize it until I had to sit with myself. I had to be on timeout starting in 2020. I had to learn how I was being guided in this thing called life, because I realized where I was in life was not it, and I wasn't happy. I was stressed out, and I didn't want to feel that way anymore. And because I didn't want to feel that way, that was the part of my soul that said, it's time to awaken. It was time for me to move forward into a sense of well-being, to a sense of peace, to a sense of deeper fulfillment. And that is where the spiritual awakening came from, because I just wasn't happy. And I had to allow myself to feel for myself that that was enough. Me not being happy where I was, me not feeling that sense of fulfillment where I was enough for me, was enough of a reason for me to quit my job. Y'all, in another Tells by Moonlight, I mentioned like I grew up in poverty. I grew up poor. And my entire life, since I was the age of 10, I had a job. I was doing something. I was always hustling. I was always trying to make money, to make ends meet, trying to take care of myself. But for the first time, I got this healthcare consulting job making almost 6 figures, y'all. And I quit that because something in me was just like, I can't do this. If I continue to live life like this, if I continue to do this job, I will be sick. I will have to literally close myself off. I couldn't live that life anymore. It just wasn't tenable for me. And so I decided to say, you know what? I'm going to move forward. And in that process, I kept making decisions that were aligned to my heart and to how I was feeling and to what I was being intuitively guided. So, not only was it, okay, Reiki, then it was like, okay, now I'm guided to learn mindfulness. Now I'm being guided to learn about somatic trauma and how that works with the body. And so I was guided and to learn about these different aspects of self and different aspects of healing on my path of healing myself in my spiritual journey, because the spiritual journey is a path of healing. It's the healing, the connection to the soul. And so I was on the path, little did I know, of healing my soul so that the truth of my authentic truth and my true essence could shine through. And so when I tell y'all, like, I cried so much. And honestly, the crying continued for a couple of years. It was 3 years of a lot of crying, 3.5 years of tears, of crying, of feeling in the dark, alone, scared, not sure where I was going, lost. But in the process of being in this dark place, I was able to see, get comfortable with the dark and the unknown. That's something I didn't realize. I had a fear of the unknown, a fear of going this spiritual path, of allowing my heart and intuition to lead me and being led in the wrong direction because I didn't trust. And that was something that came up, was trust. That this journey is all about trust and faith. Trust that I'm being guided to a better place. Trust that in this moment, this is where I'm meant to be. I'm meant to be experiencing this heart-wrenching pain, that I'm meant to be going through this so that I can come out onto the other side. And I didn't know when that would be, y'all. I didn't know when that would be. And so I had to learn how to trust that I was being guided to something better. Because staying where I was just not, it wasn't an option. And so my spiritual awakening was one of not only just healing myself, but one of acknowledging and realizing that there was something greater in the world. Because after I left the church, I was like, okay, God, that's kind of how I was. I was like, I don't know about all of that. The creator, great spirit, goddesses, who knows? And so it was a process also reconnecting back to belief and what it was that I believed in and what it was that I had faith in. And that led me back to my ancestral philosophy of Odinani, the Igbo cosmology, and understanding and way of the world and how the stars interact with everything, which then led me to other ways of being as a multi-spiritualist. And so I just wanted to say that because I didn't really have a teacher. I didn't have a guide throughout this process, but I had individuals who helped bring me to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. I was able to find resources that could help explain. So I ran out of storage, and I left off as the point of where I was talking about my spiritual awakening process. For me was the journey of releasing and letting go of everything that is not aligned. And the thing is, I asked for it, because I remember just being in my consulting job and being like, please, just like, I want something more. I want something better. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel happy. Like, please help me move forward in life. And what I was actually saying was, okay, it's time for myself to awaken to my truth. It's time for me to, and the way that happens is things start to, shit hits the fan. Everything started to fall apart, y'all. My life fell apart at the seams, and it had to. And at that point, I was so focused on what I was losing, I wasn't really realizing that I was losing so much so something better could come into my life. That what they say, rejection is divine protection, is actually real. And now I'm on a space on the other side of the awakening process and the integration of all the things I've learned and the lessons and all of that. I realized that everything I had left behind wasn't even for me. It was a part of myself that was unhealed, that was holding on to it. It was my ego that was holding on to the people, the places, the things. And then in the process of letting go, I feel so much lighter for it. I feel much more aligned and in harmony within. I feel peace, y'all. Like, I feel peace for the first time in my life. I feel peace. And I still get points where, my ego flares up and it's like, we don't know what we're doing. But it's like, that's the point. We're all making this stuff. We're all making it up, y'all. We're all making it up in guidance with our soul and guidance with our spiritual guides and team. We're all making it up. And that I had to learn how to trust my own inner guidance first and foremost. Because in my life, I learned to seek external validation. I learned to seek validation in logic, in rationality, and that's just not how spirituality works. That's just not how the soul works. That's just not how this universe works. This universe works on energy and spirit and vibration and frequency, and that doesn't make logical sense. And so I had to learn to trust where I was being guided and learn to accept where I was, when I was, knowing that there'd be a time when I wouldn't be there. What else about this spiritual awakening? It was all about my journey to truth. What was true for me with here? What was true for my soul? And what was true in terms of what my soul agreed to experience and to do when I incarnated onto this earth. That truth, the blueprint of my being, was awakened, was activated in the process of my spiritual awakening. And so now, again, it was like baby steps. It was me questioning my job, my relationships, things falling apart, my learning about energy healing and the body, and awakening to my spiritual abilities, realizing, I'm intuitive, and then realizing from there that I'm a dibia, that was a spiritual calling that I had, that was a part of my bloodline, that I'm a starseed, that I'm a light worker, that I can live the life of my dreams, and that is available to me. Like, that is an option. That isn't just something I made up when I was a child. And in the process of learning what that was for myself. What were those dreams? What did that inner child, what did that child within want to do before the world said that people like you don't do it, or that's hard, or that's kind of impossible. At one of my last 9-to-5 jobs, on the last day, we all kind of got together, and one of my managers asked a question. So if you could do anything that you wanted to do in the entire world what it is, what would you do? I remember saying, I'd be an influencer. I would create content. I would, and some other things. And someone else was just like, I don't know if I'd want to do what I enjoy as a job, because then I wouldn't enjoy it anymore. And that was so interesting to me, y'all, because I realized that that was a limiting belief that that person had. And that I, in my deep hearts of hearts, wanted to wake up doing what I loved, because then it wouldn't feel like work. Being able to have the option to wake up and be like, what do I feel like doing today? And do that. And not think or worry about, well, can I support myself, or is this feasible? But to know that I was guided and protected on that journey of doing and being that. But first I had to allow myself to be it. I had to jump and take the leap, knowing that there's going to be a period of time where I'm not seeing traction. And that's now. For me personally, that's now. But knowing that what is to come is coming, because it is meant for me, because it is for me. And what is for me cannot pass me by. What is for you will not pass you by. And so part of the spiritual awakening process was aligning to this life, and it required a huge shift from 9 to 5 to a schedule that is free. I have what do you call it? I have time freedom. I get to work when I want. But I had to make choices to align myself to do that. I had to make choices to sacrifice, to allow myself to do that. My spiritual awakening process, I realized that I wanted location freedom. I always wanted to not, the idea of being tied down to one particular place in that moment in time didn't feel aligned. And the pandemic really helped with that for me personally. And I have that now. I have location freedom. I have a lot of freedoms that I had to learn to heal anything out of the way that could allow me to live that life and say, I can do it. And so that was my spiritual awakening process. It's a major, major one, in which now I'm at the tail end of spiritual ascension. And people talk about, you ascend many times. And that is true. And ascension is just a process of getting to a higher level of spiritual awareness, where you begin to see the world in a different way. And then you reach another level of spiritual awareness. Then you get to see the world another way. And then you reach another level. Then you get to see the world another way. But I feel like I'm at the tail end of mine, where I'm ascending, where my higher self and my ego are aligned. And that was always a prayer of mine, as I always wanted to be aligned to my higher self, to my authentic self, to my true essence, my soul, and to move from that place. Because when I moved from that place, I could never fail. I could never fail, because that place is a place of divinity, is a place of God, of creator, of great spirit, the goddesses. And when you reach that level of alignment, everything works out. You are always on your path. You always win. Always. And so I wanted that for myself. And so right now, in terms of my spiritual awakening process, I have my higher self has descended. My chi has descended into my human form, into my body. My chi and I are one. And in the spiritual awakening process, our higher selves have different, I feel like I'm teaching. I'm going beyond the story. Let's stick to the story. I could do a video about that. Let me stick to the story. So let me tell you, who I am now and who I was 6 months ago are not the same. Let alone 1 year ago, let alone 2 years ago, let alone 3 years ago. I feel like the people in my life have to learn me over again. They have to be willing to learn who I am now, because I'm not the same. And that was something I had to come to terms with. In the process of healing and awakening, I realized I was leaving people behind, y'all. I was leaving people behind. Not everybody wants to be the butterfly. Not everybody wants to ascend. Not everybody wants to be involved in their spiritual or personal development. And I realized that as someone deeply committed to that, like, that is my life, and it will always be my life, that I had to be around people who too, that was their life, that they were just as serious about their own spiritual development and personal development as I was. Otherwise, I'd leave them behind. And that wasn't to say that they were bad people, or that those relationships weren't beneficial when they lasted, or that there wasn't love there. But I also realized that I couldn't allow myself to try to grab people and take them with me when at the end of the day, I had to focus on myself, because that would slow myself down. And so in the process, ooh, y'all, my eye got an itch. So in that process, I had to accept that was what was going to happen as I was letting go of so many people. And that included family, that included the life as I knew it, as I went into myself. And so that's the spiritual awakening process. Now, in terms of, I'm going to stop there because this video is long enough, and I'm going to just make another video about my kundalini awakening, because that's a separate, and then my starseed awakening, and then my shamanic initiation, my dibia, traditional Igbo medicine person, holistic soul doctor, like I like to call it. I went through so many awakening processes in the span of 3 years. In the span of 3 years, I spiritually awoke and ascended. I had learned my starseed origins. I had a whole kundalini awakening. And I went through a shamanic initiation through spirit, through the ancestors. And I had to figure out how to work with all of these different parts of myself that were coming up, these different parts of myself that were saying, it's time to embody. It's time to embody and align to this version of self that was my higher self. And all of what I was meant to do and to have and to be in this life. It's time. And so I was called higher, to a higher level, a higher plane of being. And it was a confusing process. And I also had to learn to trust, because not everybody's out here on your day-to-day walking around being like, hi, I'm going through a spiritual awakening process. I have this thing in me called my kundalini, and it's going up. It's going up, and when it goes up, it means I'm aligned to God and oneness. Hi, I'm an alien. My soul is of alien origins. Hi, I'm a dibia. I work in the quantum field, and I can heal your soul. I mean, not even, most people look at you like, okay, whatever you say. But I had to get comfortable. I had to get comfortable and accept that this is who I am. Not everyone's going to understand it. I'm not for everyone. And that's okay, because we are all on our different paths. We are all on our different paths. And I had to get comfortable with who I was truly inside. It's very I'm still in that, like that way. I was very much reserved and closed off to myself. And I am a reserved person. And I am also silly. And I am also not serious. And I am also so many things that are contradictory. And I had to be able to say I'm okay with being contradictory. And I'm okay with embodying paradox. We are in a full moon in Libra right now. And Libra is all about balance. It's all about being able to balance both sides. And so I had to learn to balance my light and my dark. My inner child with my adult child. My shadow, which is the parts of ourselves we repress. My shadow with the great things that I see about myself. My higher self with my ego. My intuition and my imagination and my beautiful psychic spiritual abilities with my logic and rationality. My spirituality with my science. I had to learn how to balance all of these parts that seemed kind of separate and say, you know what? I can be all of them. I don't have to choose, because my soul is limitless. It's infinite. The part of me that is of the Creator is infinite. And so why do I have to label and put myself in a box to be understood when I am all of that and more? And I'm constantly experiencing, exploring all these parts of myself that I wouldn't have been able to if I had not gone through my spiritual awakening process. If that process wasn't something I was willing to allow happen to me. Because I fought it. At first, I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this. My ego, I got a strong ego, y'all. And I had to have a strong ego to go through the shit that I went through. To survive, I had to be resilient. But it was in this point of time, Dark Night of Soul and all that, where the resiliency was actually detrimental to my unfolding because I needed to surrender, to let go. To let go and allow the truth to be revealed. To let go of all these parts and things I thought I was and say, who am I actually? And be curious about the parts of myself that was unfolding. The parts of myself that was like, hey, we ain't seen each other in a while, but let's get acquainted. I had to be curious and say, you know, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to judge myself, but let's see who I am and what comes up. Let's see. And so that was my tense and spiritual awakening process, y'all. If I could go back, I would do it all again, because where I am now, I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful to Spirit. I'm so grateful to myself for going through that. Because it ain't easy. It isn't easy. And it takes a lot of strength. And I was definitely depressed and anxious. And I made it through. And if you are going through your own process and you're going through your own spiritual awakening process, you can too. There is another side. Even though you cannot see it, there is another side. Because in this darkness, in this void of the dark night, we are being reconfigured and re-upgraded. We're being put together. Things are being taken from us, released. We are being aligned to our soul. Coming home to that part of ourselves. So I'm going to stop there. I've spoken long enough. I'm going to make another video about the starseed awakening, the kundalini awakening, and the ancestral initiation, because it's different. And so I want to thank y'all, as always, for taking the time to be with me, for listening to me, for sharing space with me, for receiving this healing energy that I am giving to you, for being willing to question, to be curious, and to align yourself to your soul and to your authentic true self. It's hard in a world that sees originality and uniqueness as something to be dampened down on. When people are moving in one direction, for you to go in another, you have to be willing to take a risk. So thank you. Wherever, whenever you are, do know that again, I am grateful. And I send you off, closing this space. Take care. With love.